What happens when your own family tries to trick you into a nursing home against your will? Evelyn refused to go quietly, and turned every one of their plans upside down. What she did next left everyone completely stunned. Evelyn had always prided herself on her independence. Even at 76, she managed her tidy suburban home with a brisk efficiency that put younger neighbors to shame. Each morning began with a walk through her garden, a hot cup of coffee on her sunlit porch, and the satisfaction of knowing she still ran her own life, her way. But as autumn crept into the edges of her world, a different kind of chill settled over her days. It started with small things. Her daughter, Jessica, began visiting more often, her tone laced with gentle concern. "Mom, are you sure you're taking your medication? Let me help you with those bills." Evelyn dismissed the offers, insisting she was perfectly capable. Yet every refusal seemed to fuel Jessica's quiet campaign. Soon, Jessica brought her husband Tom into the conversation. Tom was practical and blunt, his words more pointed than Jessica's cautious kindness. He pointed out a burnt pot on the stove, an unpaid electric bill, tiny mistakes that Evelyn resented being reminded of. "We just want what's best for you," he said, a phrase Evelyn was beginning to hate. The tipping point came one Tuesday, after Evelyn slipped on a damp patch in her kitchen. She caught herself on the counter, no worse for wear, but Jessica appeared within minutes, as if she'd been waiting for an excuse. That evening, Jessica stayed late, quietly rearranging the kitchen, labeling drawers, and filling Evelyn's fridge with prepared meals she insisted were easier. When Jessica finally left, the house felt smaller, the walls pressing in. Evelyn's friends noticed the change. At Bridge Club, she confided in Ruth and Gloria, her oldest companions. "They act like I'm already halfway to the grave," Evelyn complained, her voice trembling with indignation. Ruth squeezed her hand, eyes flashing. "Don't let them push you around. You're the sharpest of all of us." Gloria nodded. "You're not going anywhere unless it's by choice." But the pressure at home only mounted. Jessica began arriving with pamphlets for senior communities, each filled with glossy photos of smiling residents and scheduled activities. "Just look them over," Jessica insisted, her voice overly bright. Tom chimed in, "You'd be safer, Mom. There's always someone to help if you need it." Evelyn's jaw tightened as she tossed the pamphlets in the trash. One Friday, Tom offered to drive Evelyn to her doctor's appointment. "I can go myself," Evelyn argued, but Tom's insistence was unwavering. During the visit, the doctor, who had always treated Evelyn as an equal, suddenly asked questions about her memory, her ability to manage daily tasks. Evelyn realized with a start that Jessica and Tom had spoken to the doctor beforehand. The betrayal stung deeply. After the appointment, Evelyn overheard Jessica whispering to Tom in the hallway. "If she just agreed to a trial stay, she'd see how nice it is." Tom replied, "We can't force her, but maybe we can convince her it's for the best." That night, alone in her bedroom, Evelyn's thoughts churned. She knew her daughter meant well, but the idea of surrendering her independence, even temporarily, filled her with dread. She remembered stories from her childhood, the way her father had fought to stay in his own home until the end. She wouldn't go quietly, not while she could still think, still fight, still plan. Determined, Evelyn started making notes. She listed every recent mistake her family had pointed out, and beside each, she wrote the explanation: a power outage, a distracted phone call, a mix-up with the pharmacy. None of these were evidence of incapacity, just proof that she was human. She found her birth certificate, her will, her house deed, and locked them in her desk drawer. The following day, Evelyn attended her book club, determined to enjoy the normalcy of friendship and conversation. But as the meeting ended, Gloria pulled her aside. "Be careful, Evelyn. Sometimes families push too hard. Promise you'll call if you need help." Evelyn hugged her, grateful for the offer, but more resolved than ever to take matters into her own hands. When she returned home, Evelyn discovered that her house key was missing from its usual spot. She searched the pockets of her coat, her purse, the kitchen counter, nothing. She called Jessica, who answered with suspicious cheerfulness. "Don't worry, Mom, I have a spare. I'll drop it off tomorrow." Evelyn felt a chill. Why would Jessica take her key, if not to gain more control? That night, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table, surrounded by documents and the scattered remains of the pamphlets she'd torn up. She stared at the clock, its steady ticking matching her heartbeat. She would not be outmaneuvered in her own home. If Jessica and Tom thought they could trick her into a nursing home, they were about to learn just how resourceful Evelyn could be. The next morning, Evelyn woke before dawn, her mind sharper than ever. She moved through her morning routine with renewed purpose, feeding her cat, watering the window box, reviewing her pillbox for the week. Her missing key nagged at her thoughts, but she tried not to let frustration seep into her day. Today, she resolved, she would be the one in control. As she prepared breakfast, the phone rang. It was Jessica. "Good morning, Mom. I'm coming by with Tom after work to check in on you. We'll bring dinner, don't worry about a thing." Evelyn's jaw clenched at the phrase, "check in on you." "That's fine, dear," she replied, keeping her tone even. Evelyn spent the morning documenting everything she did. She wrote lists of tasks and ticked them off one by one. Dishes washed. Laundry folded. Bills paid and organized into neat piles. Even the plants were watered and pruned, every room in the house reflecting her attention to detail. By noon, she decided to call her old friend Gloria for advice. Over mugs of tea in Gloria's sunny kitchen, Evelyn laid out everything: Jessica's controlling visits, Tom's interference, the missing key, and the increasingly aggressive talk about senior living. Gloria's eyes narrowed in concern. "This doesn't sound right. You're as sharp as ever, Evelyn. Why not talk to Ruth's nephew? He's a lawyer, and he's helped seniors before." The suggestion set Evelyn's mind racing. She asked Gloria for the contact, scribbling the name and number on the back of a receipt. When she got home, she called immediately. The lawyer, Daniel Grant, listened as Evelyn explained her situation. "Keep documenting everything," he advised. "And don't sign anything. If your family pushes, you have the right to refuse. If anything seems suspicious, call me directly." Feeling more empowered, Evelyn set about gathering her paperwork: insurance forms, medical files, tax returns, even the printouts from her online banking. She placed them all in a sturdy accordion folder, hidden beneath the towels in her linen closet. She didn't want Jessica or Tom snooping. Late afternoon brought another surprise: a call from the family doctor's office. The receptionist informed her she'd been scheduled for a wellness assessment next week. Evelyn bristled at the unspoken implication. "Did my daughter request this?" she asked. The woman hesitated before replying, "Your daughter called about concerns, yes. But it's just routine, Mrs. Harper." Evelyn thanked her and hung up, anger and anxiety tightening her chest. When Jessica and Tom arrived that evening, they were all smiles, arms laden with takeout containers and a bouquet of supermarket flowers. Evelyn forced herself to play the gracious host, setting the table and complimenting Jessica's new haircut. But the tension simmered beneath every word. Dinner unfolded with false cheer. Tom kept steering the conversation to "what's next," reminding Evelyn that winter was coming, that houses were hard to maintain alone, that retirement villages had heated pools and chefs. Evelyn countered every suggestion with an example of her independence. "I joined the gardening club this month. My book club meets twice a week. I just renewed my driver's license, passed the vision test with flying colors." After dessert, Tom excused himself to make a quick call on the back patio. Jessica stayed, lowering her voice as soon as the sliding door closed. "Mom, I know this is hard. But we're worried. You seem distracted lately, and after that fall in the kitchen, we can't just ignore it. We want you to be safe." Evelyn looked her daughter in the eye, steady and clear. "Jessica, I appreciate your concern, but I am not ready for a nursing home. I manage just fine. Maybe not perfectly, but nobody does." Jessica looked unconvinced, her lips pressed into a tight line. After they left, Evelyn walked through every room, making sure nothing was out of place. She checked the linen closet, relieved to find her paperwork undisturbed. She jotted down everything she remembered from the evening: the exact words Jessica used, the odd way Tom had excused himself, the look in her daughter's eyes when she thought Evelyn wasn't watching. That night, Evelyn called Daniel Grant again. "They're pushing harder," she said. "They even scheduled a wellness exam behind my back." Daniel's voice was calm but firm. "If they try to move you anywhere against your will, call me immediately. You have more rights than they think." Evelyn fell asleep with the phone on her nightstand and her heart beating a little faster than usual. She was tired, yes, but not defeated. As the house settled into silence, She promised herself she'd never allow anyone to trick her out of the life she loved. Evelyn woke with purpose, determined to defend her independence at every turn. She began her morning with her usual walk, nodding to the neighbors who waved from porches or stoops. At the market, she remembered to buy bread for Ruth and the apples that Gloria loved, small details that proved, at least to herself, that her mind was as clear as ever. When she returned home, she noticed Jessica's car idling at the curb. Jessica stepped out, clipboard in hand. "Just checking up on you, Mom," she called, her smile stretched a little too wide. Evelyn invited her in, keeping her own expression pleasant but wary. Jessica began to tour the house, peering into cupboards, testing the stove burners, even checking the fridge for expired milk. "It's just for your safety, Mom," she insisted, making notes on her clipboard. Evelyn watched with growing frustration, but kept her composure, countering every implied criticism with proof of her competence. As Jessica left, she handed Evelyn a brochure for another assisted living resort, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Evelyn waited until Jessica's car had turned the corner before dropping it straight into the recycling bin. Later that afternoon, Evelyn's phone buzzed with a message from Daniel Grant. "Don't forget our call at 3 p.m. Evelyn prepared her notes, making a fresh pot of tea and tidying the living room. When Daniel's call came through, his voice was reassuring. "How are things?" Evelyn explained Jessica's new tactics, the unannounced visits, the constant inspections, the way her routines were being slowly invaded. Daniel listened carefully. "If she's making you uncomfortable, you need to document everything. And if she tries to change your locks, your bills, or your appointments, let me know right away." Feeling supported, Evelyn decided to take back some control. She called her utility providers, confirming all accounts were still in her name and passwords had not been changed. She went online and checked her bank accounts, setting up alerts for any unusual activity. Then she paid her bills, double-checking each receipt for her growing folder of evidence. Midway through her afternoon, Ruth stopped by with a plate of shortbread and her own stories of family help. The two women laughed together, finding comfort in solidarity. Ruth shared how her son had once tried to update her medicine cabinet, mixing everything up. "He nearly gave me heartburn pills for a headache." Ruth cackled. The two friends plotted a small act of rebellion. Ruth would accompany Evelyn to her wellness assessment and pose as her advocate. The following day, Evelyn set up coffee with Gloria at the town cafe, determined to maintain her routines and visibility in the community. The cafe was bustling. Gloria brought along her niece, a social worker, who offered subtle tips. "Always keep a list of your medications and appointments. Share your calendar with a trusted friend, not just family." After coffee, Evelyn visited the local senior center, not to join, but to offer to teach a workshop on memoir writing. The director was delighted, promising to set up a class the following month. Evelyn left feeling renewed, her world expanding rather than shrinking. But the battle at home intensified. That evening, Tom arrived unannounced with a contractor, claiming the house needed urgent repairs before winter. "Just a quick inspection," he said, moving from room to room, tapping on walls and windows. Evelyn trailed behind, taking notes, asking pointed questions about the supposed repairs. She insisted on receiving written quotes and refused to sign anything. After the contractor left, Tom lingered. "It's really not safe for you here alone, Evelyn. Houses like this can be a burden. Why not make things easier on yourself and on us?" Evelyn replied, her voice steady, "I've managed just fine for over 30 years. If anything breaks, I know who to call. And it isn't you." Tom left, clearly annoyed. Evelyn carefully documented the entire encounter, adding every detail to her folder. That night, Evelyn called Ruth and Gloria, sharing every development. They devised a new plan. Ruth would drop in daily under the pretense of borrowing sugar or a book, while Gloria would check in by phone every evening. Their network of support strengthened. Evelyn felt the embers of resistance flare. Sitting in her living room, Evelyn glanced at her growing stack of notes and smiled. She might be getting older, but she was not getting weaker, and she was certainly not alone. Evelyn woke early, her resolve firmer than ever. As she brewed her morning coffee, she felt a sense of defiance simmering beneath the routine. Today, she would not just defend her independence, she would assert it for all to see. She began by organizing her day around visibility. After breakfast, she walked to the local bakery, greeting neighbors with a warmth and confidence that made her feel 10 years younger. At the bakery, she chatted with Mrs. Patel, the owner, recalling Mrs. Patel's daughter's graduation and offering advice about college applications. "I don't know how you remember it all, Evelyn." Mrs. Patel laughed. Evelyn smiled, savoring the feeling of being seen as sharp and reliable. Returning home, she was greeted by Gloria, who waved from her porch with a conspiratorial grin. "The garden club wants you to give a talk on roses next month." "I said you'd love to." Evelyn agreed instantly. She realized the more she engaged with her community, the more evidence she'd have of her independence, and the harder it would be for anyone to question her capabilities. As Evelyn prepared her notes for the upcoming wellness assessment, Ruth arrived, holding a fresh bouquet from her garden and her trademark mischievous twinkle. "You're coming with me to the library's poetry night," Ruth declared. No arguments. The invitation was exactly what Evelyn needed. They spent the afternoon laughing and sharing stories, with Ruth snapping photos to send to Gloria and the rest of their circle. Late that evening, Evelyn's house was interrupted by a knock at the door. Jessica and Tom stood on the porch, tension plain in their posture. "We need to talk," Jessica said, her voice unusually strained. Evelyn let them in, mentally preparing herself for another round of persuasion. The conversation began innocently enough, with Jessica commenting on the fresh flowers and the homemade scones cooling on the counter. But Tom quickly cut to the chase. "We've spoken with the doctor and he agrees. Maybe it's time for a trial stay at Shady Pines. Just for a week. You'd have your own room, activities, meals cooked for you. It's not a commitment, just a chance to see if you like it." Evelyn took a slow breath, folding her hands on the table. "And what if I don't?" she asked calmly. Jessica hesitated. Then we'll talk. We're just asking you to try, Mom. For us." Tom pressed. "It would really set our minds at ease." Evelyn looked between them, measuring their urgency, their worry, and, most of all, their impatience. "I appreciate that you care. But I'm not ready to leave my home. I have my friends, my clubs, my commitments. I still have a life here." Her tone was gentle but unyielding. Jessica's eyes filled with tears, but Tom's face hardened. "You're being stubborn," he said. "You're making things difficult." Evelyn stood, gathering her strength. "I'm not being difficult. I'm being clear. This is my home, my life. I will not be forced out under the guise of love." After they left, Evelyn locked the door and sat in her favorite chair, letting the emotions roll through her: anger, sadness, resolve. She called Daniel Grant, recounting the latest pressure. "Stand your ground, Evelyn. Keep documenting everything. You have the right to decide where you live." The next morning, Evelyn went to the senior center to teach her first memoir writing workshop. The room was packed, her friends, neighbors, and even a few newcomers eager to put their lives to paper. Evelyn guided them with warmth and humor, sharing anecdotes and tips. At the end, the director presented her with a thank you card signed by every attendee. That afternoon, she stopped at the grocery store. Several people congratulated her on the workshop, and the cashier, half Evelyn's age, asked if she could join the next session. Evelyn smiled all the way home, tucking the card into her evidence folder. As evening fell, Gloria called. "Heard about your stand last night. We're all so proud of you." Ruth sent over a loaf of fresh bread with a note. "For the most stubborn and bravest woman I know." Evelyn sat by her window as the sun set, her house warm and filled with signs of a life richly lived. She felt the strength of her community behind her, the wisdom of her years holding her steady. Whatever tomorrow brought, she would meet it head-on her own terms. The morning after Jessica and Tom's visit, Evelyn awoke to a house that felt, at last, like her fortress. She moved through her routines with fresh purpose, reviewing her diary and to-do lists, savoring the freedom of her own space. Her calendar was packed: grocery delivery, memoir class follow-ups, and tea with Ruth and Gloria later that afternoon. As Evelyn arranged a tray of scones for her friends, her phone buzzed. It was the clinic, a reminder about her upcoming wellness assessment. "We'll see you Wednesday, Mrs. Harper," the receptionist said. "If you need to reschedule, please call." Evelyn jotted down the details, feeling her nerves tighten, but she reminded herself that she had nothing to fear. At noon, Ruth and Gloria arrived, arms full of flowers and homemade jam. The kitchen was soon filled with chatter and laughter. Ruth pulled out her phone and snapped photos, evidence of your excellent memory for the scrapbook, she joked. Gloria shared the latest gossip from the garden club, and the women exchanged advice about dealing with well-meaning but overbearing family. Midway through their visit, Evelyn's neighbor, Mr. Chen, stopped by to ask for help with his online banking. Evelyn sat beside him, guiding his hands through each step and explaining the security codes. Mr. Chen left with his accounts balanced and his confidence restored. "You're better than the bank's tech support," he grinned. Ruth and Gloria both applauded, teasing, "Maybe you should run a class at the library." Their laughter was interrupted by a knock at the door. Evelyn opened it to find a social worker standing with a clipboard and a polite but assessing smile. "Mrs. Harper, I'm doing wellness checks for the local health board. May I come in for a quick chat?" Ruth and Gloria remained at the kitchen table, their presence both subtle and strong. The social worker asked Evelyn about her daily routines, medications, friendships, and recent activities. Evelyn answered every question with precision, referencing her diary for exact dates, and invited the social worker to verify with her friends present. Ruth chimed in with stories of Evelyn's community involvement. Gloria confirmed her leadership in the garden club and memoir class. The social worker seemed genuinely impressed, finally saying, "You seem remarkably independent, Mrs. Harper. If you ever need assistance, please call. Otherwise, it looks like you're thriving." After she left, the friends celebrated with another round of tea. Evelyn felt a wave of relief and pride. "They're trying everything," she said quietly. "But I have you both, and my own mind, to rely on." Later, Evelyn took a walk around the block. Neighbors called out greetings, a few waving her over to chat about her memoir workshop or share a gardening tip. The sense of connection gave her energy. On her way back, she paused to buy tulips from the local market, chatting with the vendor about next month's festival. As the day drew to a close, Jessica called. "Just checking in, Mom," she said, her tone strained. "How was your day?" Evelyn described her packed schedule and the social worker's visit, emphasizing her community roles and friendships. Jessica listened, the silence stretching between them before she finally murmured, "I just want you to be safe, Mom." Evelyn replied gently, "I know, but safety doesn't mean giving up my life." After dinner, Evelyn reviewed her folder, adding the social worker's card and her notes from the day. She wrote a long diary entry, capturing the warmth of her friendships and the subtle victories she'd claimed. Before bed, she stood at the window, watching the lights flicker on in neighbors' homes, feeling grounded and fiercely alive. As she drifted off to sleep, Evelyn realized she was not just surviving, but living her way in her home on her own terms. Evelyn woke to bright sunlight streaming through the curtains, the air in her home brisk with the scent of fresh tulips and coffee. She stretched, savoring the gentle aches of a body still strong and the clarity of a mind determined to keep pace. Today was the wellness assessment, a day her family hoped would prove her frailty, but one Evelyn viewed as an opportunity to showcase her strength. She dressed with care, choosing her favorite blue sweater and pinning on the silver brooch Henry had given her for their 30th anniversary. It was her way of carrying his encouragement into the day. At breakfast, she reviewed her notes and diary, practicing her answers aloud, every medication, every appointment, every routine. Shortly before noon, Ruth arrived, her presence a welcome balm. "Remember, be yourself. You've got nothing to prove to anyone but yourself," Ruth said, squeezing Evelyn's hand. Together they drove to the clinic, Ruth insisting on waiting in the lobby as moral support. The waiting room was full, the air buzzing with nervous energy. When Evelyn's name was called, she squared her shoulders and walked in, her head held high. The nurse smiled, running through preliminary questions about diet, mobility, memory, and mood. Evelyn answered each one with confidence, providing dates, names, and specific examples. She even charmed the nurse by recalling her last visit in perfect detail. Dr. Patel, a new physician at the practice, conducted the cognitive assessment. He asked Evelyn to recall words, repeat sequences, and draw a clock. She finished every task with ease, then described her role in the garden club and teaching memoir writing at the senior center. Dr. Patel listened, eyebrows raised. "You're much more active than most patients your age." "I wish all my seniors were as sharp," he admitted. After the appointment, Ruth took Evelyn for a celebratory lunch at their favorite cafe. They ordered pastries and laughed about old times. Evelyn caught the eye of the manager, who waved and called out, "We can't wait for your reading next week, Evelyn." The exchange gave her a renewed sense of belonging. Returning home, Evelyn found Gloria waiting on her porch with a basket of fresh-baked bread. "How did it go?" she asked. Evelyn smiled, recounting the details of the assessment, her pride evident. Gloria hugged her. "No one's putting you anywhere, not if I have anything to say about it." Just as the sun dipped low, Jessica and Tom pulled up outside. Evelyn's chest tightened, but she steeled herself as they approached the door. Jessica carried an envelope, her face tense. "How was your appointment, Mom?" she asked, voice tight with expectation. Evelyn led them to the kitchen, poured tea, and calmly described her day, every detail of the assessment, every praise from the staff, even the compliments from the doctor. Tom's jaw tightened. Jessica looked relieved but exhausted. "That's wonderful, Mom," she murmured. "But we're still worried. You're so independent, but what if something happens when no one's around?" Evelyn listened quietly, her patience deepened by the trials of the past weeks. She explained her safety plans, the phone numbers on speed dial, the trusted neighbors who checked in, the routines she had set in place. She even showed them her evidence folder, calendars, receipts, social worker's card, all meticulously organized. Tom flipped through the folder, frowning. "You really thought of everything," he conceded, almost grudgingly. Jessica's shoulders sagged. "We just want you to be happy, Mom. And safe." Evelyn reached across the table, covering Jessica's hand with her own. "I am happy, Jessica. I promise you I am. But happiness for me means living here, among friends, with the freedom I've earned." After they left, Evelyn called Ruth and Gloria, recounting every moment. "I think they're finally starting to understand," she confessed, her relief mixed with hope. That night, she wrote in her diary until her hand ached, recording not just the events of the day, but the feeling of reclaiming her own story. As she prepared for bed, Evelyn stood by her bedroom window, gazing at the moonlit street. The world outside was full of change and uncertainty, but within her home, she felt powerful, armored by memory, community, and the unwavering certainty that she could not be outsmarted. For the first time in weeks, Evelyn woke feeling not just strong, but victorious. The results of her wellness assessment arrived in the mail, glowing praise from Dr. Patel, a written declaration of her sharpness, and a suggestion that she continue leading and inspiring her peers. Evelyn pinned the letter to her kitchen corkboard, right beside her garden club invitations and a poem Ruth had written for her birthday. Her mood soared as she prepared for the day. She decided to make her rounds through the neighborhood, not to prove anything, but to share her triumph with the people who mattered most. She baked a batch of lemon muffins, packed them in a basket, and set off, stopping first at Mr. Chen's house to check on his online banking. He greeted her with a grateful grin, his trust in her now a badge of honor. At the library, Evelyn was met with applause as she walked in. "We heard about your memoir class," the director called out. Evelyn laughed, offering muffins and accepting hugs from the regulars. She answered questions about her writing process, swapped gardening tips with a young volunteer, and gave advice to a woman nervous about her own upcoming doctor's visit. Her next stop was the bakery, where Mrs. Patel insisted on giving Evelyn a fresh loaf on the house. "You keep everyone young around here," she teased. Evelyn waved to familiar faces and listened as two teenagers recited a poem they'd written for her upcoming workshop. She promised to read it at the next session, her encouragement met with shy, proud smiles. By noon, Evelyn's heart was full. She met Ruth and Gloria at the cafe for lunch, the three of them sharing stories and planning their next library event. Gloria brought news from the senior center. Her memoir class was already full, with a wait list. Ruth presented a scrapbook she'd started for Evelyn, filled with photos, recipes, and handwritten notes from friends and neighbors. "You've built something here, Evelyn," Gloria said softly. "A whole community that depends on you." After lunch, Evelyn returned home to find Jessica's car parked out front. Her daughter was on the porch, nervously twisting her wedding ring. "Can we talk, Mom?" she asked, voice hesitant. Inside, Jessica admitted she'd read the doctor's report and realized she'd underestimated her mother's strength. "I was scared," she said quietly. "I didn't want to lose you. I thought if I could keep you somewhere safe, I could stop bad things from happening. But I see now, I wasn't listening to what you wanted." Evelyn hugged her daughter tightly. "It comes from love, Jess. I know that. But love can't take away someone's freedom. Jessica wept softly, promising to trust her more, to let her make her own choices. They sat for a long time, talking about old times, Henry's jokes, family vacations, and the wild stories Evelyn used to tell at bedtime. As twilight fell, Tom joined them. This time, he was quieter, more respectful, and even offered to help repair the loose step on the porch instead of suggesting a move. For the first time, Evelyn felt a genuine shift, her children finally seeing her as she truly was, not a burden, not a project, but a matriarch, fiercely protective of her independence. That evening, the house filled with neighbors and friends dropping in with flowers and congratulations. Ruth played piano in the corner, Gloria poured tea, and laughter spilled out into the night air. Evelyn looked around at the lively crowd, her heart brimming with gratitude. As she climbed into bed that night, Evelyn knew she had won more than just a battle for her home. She'd won back her dignity, her autonomy, and the right to live her life on her own terms, surrounded by people who finally understood and respected her strength. A week after her triumphant wellness assessment, Evelyn's home became a hub of warmth and activity. The community's faith in her was visible in every knock on her door, every new invitation. Her kitchen filled with bouquets from the senior center, notes of thanks from memoir class students, and a card signed by the garden club declaring her Queen of the Roses. Life settled into a satisfying rhythm. Ruth and Gloria dropped by most mornings for tea and laughter, each visit a celebration of camaraderie and resilience. Evelyn's phone rang with new opportunities, a neighbor requesting help organizing a block party, the librarian inviting her to lead a reading circle for the town's teenagers, the local newspaper asking for an interview about her workshop. Every yes was a statement. She was still needed, still sharp, still leading. Jessica and Tom changed too. Jessica's visits became relaxed, full of stories and real conversations. Tom arrived one Saturday with a toolkit, quietly repairing the porch step and helping Ruth plant new roses in the front garden. The past week's strain faded, replaced by a budding respect and understanding. For the first time, Evelyn felt her daughter watching her not as a problem to solve, but as a force to admire. One sunny afternoon, Evelyn hosted a picnic in her backyard for friends and neighbors. Children chased each other between rose bushes, adults lounged on blankets, and Ruth led a raucous sing-along. Jessica surprised everyone with a homemade cake, frosting spelling out, "To Evelyn, our inspiration." As the group gathered for a photo, Evelyn stood tall in the center, her arms around Jessica and Gloria, her eyes sparkling with pride. The next day, the thank you note from the librarian arrived. "You're the heartbeat of this community. Thank you for reminding us that age is only a number, and independence a gift." Evelyn tacked it beside her other mementos, her wall a testament to a life lived fully, not fearfully. Evenings became her time for reflection. She sat by her window with a diary, recording not just appointments and tasks, but little triumphs, every neighbor's name she remembered, every new flower blooming in her garden, every child's laughter echoing across her lawn. She realized that the ordeal with Jessica and Tom had made her stronger, sharpening her sense of self and her connection to those around her. One night, as the house quieted and the sky deepened into indigo, Evelyn opened her front door to let in the sweet summer breeze. She stood for a long moment, grateful. Not just for her independence, but for the friendships and family that made her home worth defending. She smiled, thinking of the old saying Ruth liked to repeat, "The trick is never letting anyone else write your story." Evelyn knew she hadn't just outsmarted those who doubted her, she'd inspired them. Her life was still hers, vibrant and open to the world. And as she turned off the porch light and closed the door, she carried the peace of victory with her, heart full, mind sharp, and spirit entirely her own.